the Linsanity. Have you been following that story at all?
What?
Jeremy Lin, are you following that story at all?
No idea. I know who he is, but I don't really know what's going on too much with him.
Are you surprised at the production that Lin's had over the past week?
I don't even know what he's done. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I'll take a look at it tonight, though.
What you just watched was Kobe's introduction to Linsanity, one of the most memorable basketball stretches that captured the attention of fans everywhere, while also introducing many to Jeremy Lin, an NBA player with one of the most unique stories in league history, and another name on the long list of players that didn't see eye to eye with Kobe at some point in his 20-year career. Kobe was never one to shy away from confrontation or any feud if it was in the way of what he wanted, and that was whether it was against his teammates, other NBA players, or even front office executives and media personalities. But out of all the beefs he was involved in, the one with Jeremy Lin still remains the hardest to fully grasp. Kobe was approaching the end of his career and his championship days were behind him. He had fully matured as an NBA vet and legend, yet during their time as teammates, Kobe was as hard on Jeremy Lin as he had been on anybody in his prime. And at times, it looked like he went a little bit too far.
We was in the game, he was like, "You left me with this shit?" I was like, "What?" He was like, "You left me with this shit?" Nah, he was pointing at Jeremy Lin.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh shit." Like,
and I feel bad for Jeremy Lin, but I know they didn't really click at all.
That was a dark year, man. That was a really, really dark year.
Now, allow me to introduce Agent X. About 10 years ago, Sportsnet, which is one of the biggest Canadian sports media outlets, had a columnist known as Agent X. With a hidden identity, the only thing that was ever revealed about X was that he was an active and certified NBA agent. Other than that, his identity was a complete mystery. In his time with Sportsnet, Agent X wrote articles and broke stories that revealed a lot of behind-the-scenes stories in the NBA, including locker room drama and other sensitive topics that only an NBA insider would know. And in the first story Agent X ever broke, he made mention of Kobe's relationship with Lin, exposing the great tension between the two players in their time as teammates. Kobe has shown throughout his career that if he doesn't trust the players he's playing with, he will disrupt the offense and try to do everything himself. Last season, Kobe absolutely destroyed teammate Jeremy Lin on a daily basis to the extent that it made some of the other players uncomfortable and clearly affected Lin's play. People associated with the team say that for whatever reason, Kobe just did not like Lin at all, and he let him know about it on a daily basis. So, what was all that about? A look at the history between these two gives us a better idea of why things were the way they were, but before we get into it, be sure to drop a like and also consider subscribing, but now let's get into it.
Who is this kid? Yeah, I've heard about him, stuff like that, but I don't know what has he been doing? He's getting like triple doubles?
Just before that post-game interview from the intro, the Lakers had just defeated the Boston Celtics at the Garden in a hard-fought game that went down to the wire in overtime. And yet, even with all the history between the two franchises, and with Kobe in particular, the reporters kept asking about the Lakers' upcoming game against the Knicks and their blossoming point guard Jeremy Lin. At that point in time, Jeremy Lin was a second-year point guard who was in the middle of an unforgettable run that was not just putting him on the map, but that was also saving his NBA career. In the year prior, Lin had gone undrafted but was signed to the Warriors before being cut after playing just 29 games, less than 10 minutes a game, while putting up subpar shooting splits as a third-string point guard. But following a successful D-League stint, the New York Knicks picked him up off waivers and signed him to a 10-day contract. The Knicks weren't necessarily sold on his skill set and ability as a player, but they were also in a desperate situation.
Like, we was struggling, dude. We was like losing by 6, losing by 4, and it was all due to we didn't have a point guard that went downhill.
Despite having 4 players at the point guard position, the Knicks still lacked the right player to run their offense, and that was because the ones on the roster fit one or more of these descriptions. They were either past their prime, not true point guards, inexperienced, or in the case of Baron Davis, injured. But that was exactly how Lin was able to get his shot, because as his 10-day contract was expiring, the Knicks, who started off the season 8-15, realized that they could use him a little longer.
Jeremy Lin was there to help me get back to planning, so I needed another week. That's how he got his other 10-day, because I wasn't ready. My back was still f***ed up, and I was
Wow.
recovering.
So if you would have been healthy, we might not have ever
We would have
seen.
never seen Jeremy Lin.
Crazy.
And for Jeremy Lin, that second 10-day contract was the last window of opportunity at what looked like a dying NBA career.
And I go to D'Antoni, I'm like, yo, bro, like, he's the only point guard that goes north and south. Nobody else on the team.
Okay, they said, well, yeah, let's try it. And I go, okay, next game, if we get a chance, we'll definitely try it. And he came in and we opened things up and
like the shit just started.
Look who's coming in. Jeremy Lin, and you're a pretty big ovation. Jeremy Lin drives and finishes. Nice play from Lin. There's the strip, but Lin throws it ahead to Tony Douglas. Up for the layup, backs the lower defensive box. Restricted areas negated. Nice feed inside. Lin to Jeffries. Lin once again trying to play a little two-man game. Backs it in. Nice play with Champ.
Lin showed out early and gave the team a little bit of everything, from playmaking to pushing the pace and some scoring as well, and the crowd was loving it.
Jeremy, that's what the fans are cheering here, Clyde. Up by Petro, gets to the rim, count it, and a foul.
By the end of the third, everybody knew that this was the Jeremy Lin game, but they were also just celebrating a measly 12-5-5 game.
Look at his numbers.
What they didn't know was that what they were witnessing was just the beginning.
By Jeffries, you mentioned the intangibles that he brings to a game. Lin on the drive, inside to Stoudemire. Anthony now 3 for 14. Lin to the basket, reverse layup, he puts it in. Little fancy shot clock at 8, splits the defense again, gets to the rim, puts it in, and a foul. Wow! Jeremy Lin does it again.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Jeremy Lin game. It's not unusual to see role players or a random NBA player going off for a big scoring game, and in many ways, this is what many thought that this was for Jeremy Lin. Except he went on to do it again,
The defenders, gets inside, lefty layup, puts it in.
and again,
Nobody stopping Jeremy Lin.
and that's how we arrived here.
Would you consider guarding him if he's having one of those games?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Now, if it's not obvious already, the difference between Jeremy Lin and Kobe Bryant in terms of who they were in the league couldn't have been any bigger. Jeremy Lin was the last man on the Knicks bench fighting for a roster spot, and Kobe was the most accomplished player in the league at the time, with 5 championships under his belt. Lin's career was hanging on by a thread, but Kobe had nothing more to prove at that point. And even when you compare how they made it to the league, you see that Lin was an undrafted player who played all 4 years at Harvard, and Kobe came into the league as a lottery pick straight from high school. The difference was night and day, and part of what made their matchup so exciting was how it was such a clash of 2 completely different worlds.
A sellout crowd at Madison Square Garden, and many to see the Cinderella story of Jeremy Lin, who has captivated the fans here. But he'll be going up against someone that has done that many, many times in his career, Kobe Bryant and the Lakers, and their visit to New York.
Hey, Kobe, don't let this dude bust your ass. He hot. You know, Kobe like, come on, BD. Not worried about none of that. I'm like, hey, yo, he is going to.
Size of the Laker front line when he penetrates. Lin shot, knocks it down, and it's just like that, a 6-point game. Knocks it down, and a foul. They put a body that time.
And then also 3 assists. He has the double team, but it's late.
Lin with 5 assists. Tough turnaround shot. Gets to the goals. Landry Fields on Bryant. Quick jump shot, short. Jeremy Lin the rebound.
Give him those jump shots. Just don't let him put it down on the floor.
Lin likes the open floor, spinning, puts it up and backs it in. Yes. Sensational play for Jeremy Lin. And the Spartan crowd on its feet again.
Kobe started off the game struggling as he shot just 1 for 11 for 9 points. Meanwhile, Jeremy Lin had picked up where he left off, scoring 16 points and 5 assists on 60% from the field in the first half. But the game was far from over. In fact, the matchup that fans were looking forward to was just beginning, because in the third quarter, Kobe flipped a switch as the duel continued.
Bryant, couple of fakes. Gonna put it up and knocks it down. That's one of the toughest shots he's taken tonight. And Kobe got one more after this before heading home as Kobe Bryant knocks. Bryant spinning. Difficult shot for some.
Yeah. See, once again.
Kobe looked like he was catching fire, and based on Iman Shumpert's famous story about this game, he was just getting started.
The fourth quarter start, and Kobe said, "You had a great game."
Jeremy Lin already had it going, and the Knicks were in the lead, so the battle continued.
Shumpert out to Lin. Lin fakes. Pull-up jump shot. Knocks it down.
The man come down. You remember he came shot fake.
Defenders on him. Bryant
Threw it off the
gets
glass,
away.
caught it,
Off
threw
the
it to the corner.
backcourt. Out to Gasol, and Gasol knocks it down.
I'm like, bro, what you on?
And anytime that they're going to switch here and you get that mismatch, they've got to go to Gasol.
Kobe Bryant again. 26 points for Bryant. Brown wants him. Puts up the two-pointer. Puts it in. Jeremy Lin with 31. Jeffries another rebound. Lin for three. Bang! He makes a move to the basket.
Yeah, the big thing with the Lakers now, you got to get good shots.
Good shot and a foul. Lin on the drive, gets inside, banks it in. Wow!
How about that? How about that?
Kobe Bryant, that's good. Bryant answers right back. What a duel, and who thought it'd be these two?
And Lakers got to look quick here.
And got to look for threes. Kobe Bryant drills three. And it's a 5-point game with 16.9 remaining. And the Knicks will win it. Linsanity continues here at Madison Square Garden.
The game came to an end, and despite the 34-point performance and a 24-point half from Kobe, the Knicks won the game, and Jeremy Lin outdueled Kobe Bryant as he finished with 38 points and 7 assists. Now, let's take a moment to revisit how things have progressed so far. Less than 24 hours ago, Kobe had no idea what the Jeremy Lin hype was all about, and reporters and other NBA players were trying to sell him on it. As a competitor, Kobe said that he would take on the challenge and handle Jeremy Lin himself, but now he's just been outdueled by him in a loss to the Knicks.
Kobe was so tight. He was so tight. He was hot.
This was the foundation of the relationship between these two, and based on how things progressed, everything that developed, good or bad, was on that bedrock. Just 2 weeks after their matchup, Kobe was asked about Linsanity again, and his tone had changed. He seemed to be on board with all the hype, as he shared that Lin's explosion should have never been a surprise. The biggest thing to me is how everybody missed that. They would all be fired if I was owning a team.
The thing that was most impressive is, watching him play. I mean, he can play. It's not something where he's just kind of hitting a hot streak here and there or something like that. He can play. That's great.
Kobe was officially a believer.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Jeremy. We have his uniform, and give him a big welcome to Los Angeles.
Jeremy Lin got traded to the Lakers in the summer of 2014, and a lot had changed in both their careers. Lin was no longer the star he had been during his Linsanity run, and he had left New York because the Knicks decided to make Carmelo Anthony the focal point of their offense, even to the point of choosing not to re-sign Lin. But after 2 seasons with Houston, he had found a bit of a steady identity in the league as a mid-level NBA player, and a good point guard who could give a team an offensive spark, whether that was off the bench or as a starting lead guard in the rotation. Kobe, on the other hand, was being ushered into the tail end of his career. He had torn his Achilles at the end of the 2012-13 season and had only played 6 games in the following season before getting sidelined with a fracture in his left knee. So the 2014-15 season was Kobe's return to the court after a long absence, and it's pretty well documented that during that time, Kobe had a strong desire to prove that he was still the same threat to the league that he had been before the injuries. And most of this drive was fueled by everything that had been said about his career being over.
All the reporters who say he couldn't come back from his Achilles or other injuries, he had this intense level of I'm gonna prove you wrong.
It was tough for him to really let go.
Of course.
Yeah, because he's so used to being the GOAT, and he came back demanding so much, trying to shoot every shot again.
Unfortunately for Kobe, when he returned with this big goal of proving everyone wrong, he was expected to do so with a team that was, not good. Based on past seasons, the only players that could really lead and move the needle on this squad were Nick Young, who brought some scoring off the bench, 33-year-old Carlos Boozer, and 25-year-old Jeremy Lin, who was now the franchise point guard. So right from the jump, Kobe had really high expectations for Jeremy Lin as a guy who could help him bring the Lakers back into playoff contention, or at least back to a place of playing a respectable brand of basketball. But when the season started, things didn't progress as expected. The Lakers started off the season with a 5-15 record, and as early as the first month of the season, Kobe had already expressed what his expectations were for Lin and how it sometimes looked like he wasn't really living up to them yet.
You have to be able to assert yourself, especially on the team that I'm playing on. Because I don't want chumps, I don't want pushovers. And if you're a chump and you're a pushover, I will run over you. And so it's important for him to have that toughness and to say, no, I believe in myself. I can step up, I can make these plays, I can perform. I think that is very, very important.
Now, this was a major difference between Kobe and Lin that played a huge role in the dynamic of their relationship. We know that Kobe was an intense competitor who had a heavy presence even among his fellow superstars. But Jeremy Lin, on the other hand, was more of a reserved player who prioritized principles like playing the right way and putting the team first in a way that sometimes made him appear passive. And apart from Linsanity, he never really maintained that mental edge or killer instinct, and this was mostly seen through his inconsistency. He averaged 12 points and 5 assists to start out the season, and it was on below average shooting splits from both the field and from 3-point range. And his struggles went beyond just the numbers because on many occasions, Kobe was so visibly upset with Lin's decision making and would call him out on and off the court, highlighting just how much Lin still had some development to do as a point guard. Because of this rough start, Lin was taken out of the starting lineup 20 games into the season, and it became apparent that the year wasn't going to be what the Lakers had envisioned. They started off the season historically bad, and to make it worse, they were heading towards the worst season in franchise history. Now, part of that was also because of Kobe. There were a lot of games where he didn't pass the ball to his teammates and instead relied on hero ball, which only hurt the team even more. He had at least 10 games where he shot 25 or more shots, and he only shot over 45% in just one of them. And this is why we got moments like the famous play where Lin waved off Kobe to take a contested 3 instead. So Kobe played a major role in the losing, but the struggles also stemmed from the lack of dynamic guard play, which Jeremy Lin was expected to bring. This is where Kobe's frustration with Lin really began to settle in, because 2 games after Lin was moved to the bench, Kobe took things into his own hands and made it a point to bring out the assassin that he had seen that one night at the Garden. And all of it climaxed in what was one of the most intense Kobe moments ever caught on camera. If you were to watch those practice clips with no backstory, you'd think that Kobe was going back and forth with Nick Young and in turn trash talking the rest of the opposing team. But that was not actually the case.
What do you remember from that day and that infamous Kobe rant?
Oh man, it was mostly aimed at Jeremy Lin, to tell you the truth.
Like, it was like a testing day for Kobe to test, like Jeremy Lin, test me, and test like Wesley Johnson and other guys.
As you heard Nick Young put it, that practice was a test from Kobe, and it was supposed to bring out the guy we saw in Linsanity, but Jeremy Lin failed that test.
From the start, he was killing Jeremy Lin. Like, I guess he wanted Jeremy Lin to be something he wasn't, but he was killing him from the start of the practice. I don't know why we got him. Why is he here? He had one good year, talking crazy.
And Jeremy Lin didn't fail because he lost the practice or because he was getting yelled at the most, but because of how he shrunk in that cutthroat practice atmosphere. Just look right here as the team was getting into the huddle. Jeremy Lin was getting patted on the back and barely getting his hand up. This body language is one of a defeated man, but it didn't just end with mannerisms.
People don't know Jeremy Lin actually cried in the locker room that day.
And for Jeremy Lin, failing Kobe's test proved a few things. First was that Lin wasn't who Kobe thought he was as a player who could raise the team's level. And second, based on Lin's reaction in the locker room, it showed that the two players just had a completely different approach and mentality to competition and to building the team. And unfortunately, when this became clear, it didn't bring an end to the tension between these two, but it only heightened it some more. For Jeremy Lin, that marked a new period in time where Kobe had lost all respect he once had for him. And if you recall the quote from Agent X that I showed at the beginning of the video, if Kobe didn't trust the players he was playing with, he would disrupt the offense and try to do everything himself. And that's the approach he adopted with Lin. And that led to moments like this in the clutch.
And it's a tie game and a full timeout.
And that means that the worst thing that should happen to the
That was pretty much the picture of their relationship following that practice. They were also taking subtle shots at each other in the media, with Kobe mainly talking about how Lin had the tools to be great but lacked the mental aspect to put it all together, and Lin also calling him out for having unrealistic standards and for his selfish nature.
Basketball is just, we gotta do it together on both ends of the floor. It can't be, if I go in to a game concerned about myself, then that's detrimental to the team.
I think he played well. I mean, he shot the ball well. He just needs to relax. Sometimes really smart people take themselves too seriously. Just gotta relax, man. Let's go out and play.
No, I thought we played pretty hard for a team full of toilet paper. I thought that was pretty good.
It was around this time that Kobe constantly reminded Lin how much he didn't like him or respect him, but things eventually came to a standstill when Jeremy Lin called out Kobe for the way he talked about him, which ultimately led to the two not talking for the rest of the season.
I said, look, you're Kobe. Like, I'm coming in trying to learn from you, okay? So, like, I'm okay with anything as long as you talk to me like a man. Like, in terms of, like, don't talk down to me like I'm a boy. Talk to me like a man and respect me. After that text message conversation where we were going back and forth with each other, like, we didn't speak for the last 4 months of the season.
Interestingly, a lot of what I mentioned took place in less than half a season because Kobe only played 35 games that year before getting ruled out with injury. So although the relationship was so intense, most of that intensity was actually short-lived. Now, hopefully by now you have a better sense of why these two had such a complicated relationship. One conclusion that makes a lot of sense is that Kobe was just disappointed that Lin didn't live up to the expectations he had for him. Kobe was the same person that was on record talking about how Linsanity was no fluke. He had bought into the hype after multiple people were telling him about Jeremy Lin, and then of course there was also that matchup at the Garden. But in their time as teammates, Lin didn't turn out to be who Kobe expected him to be at a time when he was desperate to make a statement to the whole league. And it wasn't fair to punish Lin for it, but he disappointed Kobe both in his production, but more importantly in his mentality and approach. And because of that, Kobe made life extremely hard for him.
You're going to show up to play, and you're going to lollygag through this scrimmage, through this drill. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to let you know I beat you. I'm going to want you to reconsider your professional life choice.
Of course, this tension didn't last forever. Lin signed with the Charlotte Hornets in the following season, which was Kobe's final year in the league. And as you probably know, Kobe had his farewell tour going on, and when the two matched up one last time, they shared a moment of appreciation for each other. And according to Jeremy Lin, following that game, things went back to normal and they started talking to each other again, with Kobe also offering him an invitation to provide any advice or guidance that Lin needed for the rest of his basketball career.
And in the middle of the game is when we buried the hatchet and we said, like, you know what, it's over. And so we started talking to each other. We were asking about each other's families. And then even after the game, we started texting again. He was giving me some advice on my game. And my whole thing the whole time was like, look, I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying when you talk to me, don't talk down to me, and I'm ready to listen and I'm ready to try to help this team in whatever way is possible.
I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this topic, so if you remember that season, feel free to drop your perspective on this beef in the comments section, and be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more.